This is a really big deal for me, so I want to thank you so much for coming out. Two reasons why this is particularly exciting today. One is that I see a lot of students in the room. This is part of your MBA class. I have so much love and so much respect for students for a few reasons. I have two stepkids that are university students. I have a niece and nephew that are both in university. None of them at UNB, so clearly they may have done something wrong. But I love the fact that you guys are at this amazing point in life where you have so much potential, and you've grown up, I'm only probably 15 years ahead of most people, but you've grown up in such a world where technology is at the forefront of everything that you've been exposed to, and you've grown up around it. I remember when I was in college, Facebook wasn't even a thing yet, so you guys have been through this, and you've now experienced the power of online and the power of today's world. So one, I'm just so thrilled that I'm here and around people in college, and they're not asking me to feed them. Because normally that's my experience, is like, Heather, I need some food. I'm poor. The other reason is I get to speak alongside a really good friend of mine. Dan is actually one of the people that instigated me to start. So you're going to be in really, really good hands this afternoon. Once I'm done kind of sharing a bit of my story, you're going to hear from a great guy that I love and respect a lot. So thank you, and I'm, again, very excited to be here. I'm excited to talk about my passion for New Brunswick. A few things about me just to get this off the table right away. I am a really, really, really proud New Brunswicker. I've grown up here. I've continued to live here. I've never moved. I've never even really contemplated moving, to be perfectly honest. I had opportunities out west. I had opportunities on Ontario, and I chose to stay because I really believe that we live in the most special and wonderful place on earth. As the introduction alluded, I'm the co-founder, president of a great company called Onboardly. I couldn't be more proud. It's my baby. It's everything to me, with the exception of the fact that I'm also a really happy wife and a proud stepmom, as I alluded to. Those are the other really big things in my life. Three things to get off the table right away. One, I'm not the most appropriate speaker, so I really apologize in advance if I accidentally drop swear words of some kind. I'm sure you've all heard them before, so it really shouldn't throw you off. I'm an eternal optimist. So the other thing that you need to know about me is if somebody seems negative, or if anything that I say even maybe comes off a tiny bit negative, it's not because I mean it, it's because I truly believe we can do absolutely anything. And that's been the basis of everything that I've done in my life, is falling under that belief. And the third is that I'm a big believer in community. So these types of events are so, so important, not only for me to have the opportunity to share my story, but to maybe have a chance to talk afterwards and hear yours as well, because the only way that we're going to do this is doing it together. So thank you for that. And now that we can get those things out of the way, I'd love to go on and tell you a bit more. If anyone is socially inclined or social media inclined, I hope you are. You should be. If you're not, let's talk later. I'll convince you that you should be. My Twitter handle's @HeatherAnn, and I'd be really happy if you had any thoughts afterwards. Send me a message. If I say anything really stupid, call me out on it too. That is totally fine. What I'm excited to talk to everybody today about is the day that I decided to choose passion over a paycheck. And while I understand that those two things can sometimes play hand in hand, and no one wants to go through their life not getting a paycheck, it's pretty difficult to live without one, as some of you may or may not have experienced in your life. But there was a day that I decided that the paycheck was no longer going to be good enough for me. And some of you might be in those shoes right now. So I want to be really honest and tell you where that story came from and what that was all about. When I was growing up, all my parents wanted for me, all they wanted was for me to get an education. Neither of my parents went to college, or college, university. So they really wanted me to go to university. They wanted me to get top grades. They wanted me to graduate, and above all, when I graduated, they wanted it to be a good diploma that was going to get me, what, a job? Everybody wants a job, right? When they're done university. So all they wanted was a job, and not just any job. They were adamant that this job had to be a safe job. They wanted a pension plan. What does it have for benefits? Does it have health care? Everything was focused on finding this magical job. So what did I do? My dad, I should say, was a civil servant. He worked for the city of Moncton for 30 years. My mom was a church secretary. full-time career life people at their jobs. They never bounced from job to job. In fact, they really kind of looked down on this bouncing from job to job thing, because that proved that you weren't serious, and that proved that you weren't committed to what you're doing. So my parents really wanted me to go get this job. So what did I do? I went off to university. I went to St. FX, don't boo me. And I literally spent 4 years getting the perfect combination degree in my mind. I wanted to work in tech to some extent, but not too much. I didn't want to program, and I wanted to work in business because I saw that as much more employable than the arts, for instance, or something else. So I graduated with this business degree with a concentration in IT, and before I even graduated, I had a job. I did what any really hardworking person would do that was in the shoes of a student who had the expectations of giants placed on their shoulders by their parents, and I went out and I got the job and I lined up, and so I basically walked off graduation stage, took the weekend off, and walked into work. How many students would be lucky enough to be able to walk out of university and walk right into a job? That's a huge accomplishment, right? Problem was, the job was not something that I was going to do for the rest of my life. I did it for 3 years. I worked my way up at the City of Moncton. I worked in the Community Development Department, which you would think sounds like a really good fit for someone who loves community, loves their province, loves their city, really proud, passionate New Brunswicker. But I walked into this government job, and with absolutely no disrespect to government, I think government's tremendous, and there's so many civil servants I know that are really, really good at their jobs and do such great things. But I worked my way from, the entry level, $28,000 back in the day salary, all the way up to, the highest I could go before I essentially hit a ceiling where I knew I wasn't going to be able to surpass it for years and years and years and years and years. And I was stuck in that, 2.5% increase every so many years kind of mindset, that all of a sudden I was now talking about pension politics and the union and how we were going to fight, and none of it felt like anything authentic to me at all. It felt so weird and so ugly. And I remember sitting there, and I went to my boss and I said, look, I need to do something more than this. Can I do some extra projects? Can I do something? I need something that's going to get me excited and fired up every day, because I can't just sit at this desk and process this paperwork every day. And she said, I'm sorry, there really isn't anything for you to do right now. And in fact, Heather, if I was being perfectly honest, you're kind of pissing some people off. I said, what do you mean? I've been here 3 years. I'm doing a great job. I'm asking to do more work. Why am I pissing people off? They said, because when you stay past 4:30, a lot of people kind of get cranky, because that makes it seem like they're leaving early. When they're just leaving on time, they're just punching the clock. And I said, but I'm not done at 4:30. Sometimes I'm done at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. That's making everybody pissed off and making you look bad, or making them look bad. So I wasn't making any friends, and I knew it was time to go. So I packed out. I had no job. I didn't know really what I was going to do, but I knew I was going to find something exciting. My parents didn't talk to me for about a month, with the exception of oh, you're still alive? Good. How's the job hunt? That was it. They were so mad. My mom, and the worst thing I did too, I cashed out my pension plan that I'd saved up on for 3 years, because, mom was like, you did what? That pension was going to take you to retirement. I'm like, Mom, it's a couple $1,000s. I need this to live on. I don't have a job, And, she was so mad. I just remember so mad at me. But I used that little bit of money to kind of pay off a credit card that I've racked up a bit, and kind of lived off of that for a little while. But one of the things that I realized that we absolutely have to do when we're young, and particularly when we were young. I mean, if I look back, I was about 24 at the time. 24, 25, yeah. And, what better time in my life? I didn't have kids. I was newly married. What better time to really take a risk than then? I mean, you don't have a lot of obligations. I had an apartment. I didn't have a house. There were no things that were really holding me down. So I decided that instead of, trusting that the government was going to keep me safe, I was going to redefine safe. So what is safe? Safe to me today is having a ton of competence, knowing things, learning things, being exposed to smart people, having the confidence that if you get fired tomorrow or the job of your dreams doesn't work out, that you can find another one. And, arrogance, the arrogance of youth is a beautiful thing, because you're convinced you're brilliant, right? No matter what, you're so smart. I'm still convinced I'm so smart, just for the record. But, I love that because you can go out and you're just convinced you're going to get another job. But you know what? If you convince yourself you're going to get another job, you're going to get another job. That is the absolute God's honest truth. If you're convinced you're going to do something, you're going to do it. The problem is so many people aren't convinced they're going to do things. They let negativity and self-doubt define them, and it becomes what people told you can't do as opposed to what you've convinced yourself you can do. So I decided I was going to redefine safe. So I walked out of City Hall, and I'm excited, and I've got my box. If you can kind of imagine this, like, metaphorical box of junk, and it's kind of the baggage I've carried from being underutilized, let's call it. I look at the experience as such a positive one, but definitely underutilized. So underutilized for 3 years of my good, hard-working years. And I had no pension plan at that point, so I was kind of stressed out because Mom convinced me that was a really bad thing. And no savings, walked and sat across the table. Believe it or not, somebody said, you got to meet these 2 guys. And I sat across the table from these 2 really interesting but very quirky guys who were starting this internet technology company. And I had a background in IT. I was pretty convinced I could code at that point, and I definitely couldn't. But I was convinced that I could add some value to this IT company. And so I'm sitting across from these guys, and they're just selling me on their passion. And that was the point that I realized, I think, these guys are so passionate. They're convinced this crazy internet thing is going to work. I want to help them make that work. And that's when I realized that SAFE was not so much about a pension plan or a job or a 9-to-5 or a set salary. It was about figuring out ways that you can be useful in people's lives and help them really grow things that are meaningful. I mean, this company was helping rural communities get access to internet. And I grew up in a rural community. I grew up in a community of 25 people. So to me, that was pretty cool because I was on dial-up when everybody else had actual internet. So that really connected with me. That made a lot of sense. But long story short, that job didn't last long. The reason it didn't last long, back to the same old story, Heather. I started telling people how to do their jobs because I was the smartest person in the room. And startup founders who believe everything about their company, and you start telling them that everything that they're doing is kind of ass backwards and they don't know shit about shit, they did not like that very much. So that didn't work out for very long. Let's just assume that for the next 3 years that happened a lot of times. Okay? It happened at least 4 times that I can count in the next 3 or 4 years. But the exciting part about all of that was that I really, every time, would fall out of one job, either got fired or very graciously asked that maybe it was better if I moved on somewhere else. I don't know if anybody been in those shoes, was maybe it's not the right fit and maybe there's something else for you. I actually once had a guy line up another job for me because he knew that he didn't want to keep me, but this guy could probably use me for a short period of time. It was just bad. And so you start to wonder what's wrong with it. The funny part is I never thought there was anything wrong with me. It was totally them the whole time. And the great part about that though is my whole life, there's nothing wrong with me, it's just everybody else. So, going through that, I really quickly learned how to rebound. So somebody doesn't want you, or maybe it's not the right fit. I mean, I left a couple, let's be honest, but probably just weeks before they left me. But, the reality of that is I got really comfortable with change. I got really comfortable with figuring it out. What didn't happen overly well was, figuring out that despite the fact, I kept doing the wrong things. They say insanity is the act of doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, I kept expecting a different result. I was going to go work for someone else. I was going to do this. I was going to do the exact same thing I did the last time. I was going to replicate it and expect for them all of a sudden to work out, for it to be the perfect opportunity for me. And the reality was that just wasn't going to happen. My gut was just telling me this was bad, this wasn't feeling good. I had to start figuring out how I was going to be able to do something differently. After losing, let's talk about the last job. The last job was for a company that I really, really wanted to work for, or at least felt finally like I was pretty close to that being the right space. Again, another young technology company. It felt really good. I was trying my best. I was doing a really good job too. I'm not blowing sunshine up my own butt. I was doing an awesome job. In fact, I was doing such a great job that they no longer needed me. And because they got a ton of PR. I work in PR, and so they got a ton of PR coverage. And then because of all that coverage, they got a lot of users, which is what they wanted. And really then at that point, they kind of had to iterate. If you guys know anything about the technology software model, you get a bunch of users, then you step back, you learn from those users, you iterate, make the product better, and then you take another wave and you go back out and you get more users. Well, when you're iterating on product, the girl that can't code really can't help you. So we made a really polite leaving or parting of ways, but I was still heartbroken. I was heartbroken because I thought, well, I must be able to be some use somewhere or do something, and this has just happened way too much. I was especially heartbroken, and this is a bit of a sad story, and I apologize, but because throughout all those ups and downs and highs and lows, I became, believe it or not, for an optimistic person, a pretty sad person. I felt pretty dejected a few times. I married early. I married at 24. Nobody get married at 24. If I just give you some advice, don't do that. That's a really bad idea. You don't even know yourself a little bit. Is somebody engaged? I'm sorry if I offended you, but like, it is such a bad idea. It's a bad idea for so many reasons. But I married the guy that I fell in love with in university. And again, I'm sorry if I've just offended somebody, and your marriage isn't necessarily doomed, just probably. And, I married my best friend. I love him to death. I really do. I love him so much, and I still do. But one of the things I realized is going through all this success and failure, I was learning a lot about myself. And as you're learning a lot about yourself, and as many things as you find out that you are, you're also not a lot of things. And what I realized is that I wasn't his wife. I wasn't doing a very good job at that at all. And I didn't even want to do a good job at that. And so at 27, I got divorced. Pretty awesome track record for me, right? I've probably gained and lost 6 jobs over the course of 5 years and gained and lost a husband. Congratulations, Heather. You're a winner now. And the worst part of all of it is that during this, so you go through this divorce process, that was all in the works, and we were getting divorced, and, it was really amicable. Like, it was one of those things where it's like, what do you want, the toaster or the microwave? Oh, microwave, We were both cool about it. It was the most laid-back divorce you could ever imagine. But I moved away, I moved out to my friend's house, but at least I still had this job, but then I lost the job. So now I have no husband, so no safety net. Safe is like a word that is not in my vocabulary anymore. I'm living in my friend's, I'm talking about a room the size of this stage with a little twin bed, and borrowed everything, and I used to eat her food because I didn't have any, and she'd be like, who ate the whatever? I don't know, it must have been the other guy. Literally it was that awful. And from there I lost the job, and now I have no money, and I have to pay my friend rent, and I'm still living in a shoebox. And I used to have this really nice house and this husband and this car. I have no car. I have nothing at this point. I'm walking to work in the snowstorm going what did I do? I remember calling my ex-husband going will you please take me back? He's like, are you kidding me? No. And I'm like, oh, shit. I'm screwed. So at that point, I'm like, I need to do something dramatically different. If I'm going to do that, I know I can go get another job because I've just done it 13 times. I exaggerate a lot too, it's really 5, but I've just done this a million times. Why am I gonna go get another job? I need to do something different. And I started making phone calls. The first phone call I made, and I'm excited that he's in the room, was to Dan. I knew Dan from back in high school. We actually used to get kicked out of the same computer class together, so we had a lot of chance to bond in the hallways when when we weren't in class because we weren't allowed to be there because we were both pretty serious shit disturbers. Needless to say, he went on to actually code, and I just did not. But the moral of the story is he was one of the first people I called, and I'm like, Dan, look, I got this idea. What I think I'm going to do is start this consulting business because I've just helped all these tech companies. Obviously, I should be able to do that for myself and to just sell to multiple tech companies, and I'm going to have this great business. And he was like, nope, you can't. I'm like, what do you mean, no, I can't, asshole? I thought we were friends. He's like, no, I'm your friend. So I'm telling you right now that unless you do something really, really different, that model's tired. That's been done. Create something of value, and then you'll be able to maybe make a go at it. But still, even then, I don't know, I'm not feeling it. You don't sound excited. You sound like this is maybe just an alternative. Well, I didn't like that, so I just told him he was wrong. And I went on and called 10 other people. One of the things I realized is never call your friends, because your friends really, really don't. They're going to tell you that you're awesome, right? You tell your friend, hey, how do I look? Great. Even though you're bulging out of your pants. Oh, no, I think you can make it work-ish. Do you think I'm smart? Absolutely, you're the smartest person. You're kind of stupid at that. None of your friends will say these things to your face, so I stopped telling friends. What I did instead was I made a list of the 10 people in New Brunswick that I needed to meet. because I thought that those 10 people were connected to the customers that I wanted to serve. So I absolutely wanted to figure out a way to go and build my own little, like, Heather's dream team. Like Heather's little, all the people on the base of the pyramid that were gonna make me the cheerleader on the top, you know? Who was gonna lift me up when I had so many failures, both personally and professionally, that I could possibly count, dragging me down, no money, and nothing to support myself. So I borrowed my friend's car, filled it up with gas. You know, credit cards are great for a lot of reasons. I lived on one for about 6 months. And I went around the province and I talked to about 10 people. I got the privilege of having lunch with one today. That's why I was a little late. Again, apologies. And, you know, 9 other people. And I said, what is it going to take for me to make this successful in your opinion? But they're people I didn't know. So it wasn't a single person I knew. You talk about serendipity. You know, I remember being in Fredericton and this one entrepreneur that I was supposed to meet flaked on me. He got busy and he just didn't show up. So here I am sitting at this coffee shop hoping that this guy's gonna show up. It's 10 minutes past, it's 15 minutes past, it's 20 minutes past. He doesn't show up. And now I've driven all the way to Fredericton to meet this guy because this was the one day that he could meet me. And I went down the hallway of the mall. What is the mall here? Regent something? Yeah. And there was the legend beside the elevator that you look at, and it kind of tells you all the floors. And I don't know why that day I walked down towards that hallway, and I just stopped for a second, dejected again, story of my life. And I looked at the elevator, and I saw New Brunswick Innovation Foundation. And I'd heard of the New Brunswick Innovation Foundation. I knew what they did. They're an organization funded in some part by the government that helps give money to early stage technology companies. One of the things I realized is I want to work with early stage technology companies, but I also need them to have money to pay me. So maybe I'll talk to the guys that give the money to the people that I want to pay. If I can get them on my side, they'll refer people that they've just funded to me. So I did the one thing that I've always been nervous to do, and I cold called somebody. I rang the elevator bell, and I went up, and I just remember, picture yourself in an elevator. You can do this, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. And I'm psyching myself up the whole way up the elevator. And I get to the top, and it opens, and I'm like, nope, not doing this. And then I'm like, yes, you're doing this, you know? And then you turn yourself around, and I remember seeing the receptionist, and she's the gatekeeper. Like, you know, there's always that gatekeeper. And I'm like, hello. How are you? You know, and so you really kind of, I've got this business idea, and I'm just wondering who I can talk to. And she introduced me to this guy, and this guy, I'll call him Scott. And Scott helped me get my first 3 customers. And one of the things that I've realized is that when you don't have any money, and you don't have a lot of time, because there was not a lot of time, like I needed to figure out a way to get money too, so money and time, and there are all sorts of things going against you, like self-doubt and the fact I didn't have equipment. I didn't have a computer that worked properly. Like I was using like an old machine. The reality is that constraints make you awfully creative as long as you've got a ton of positivity and you're convinced that you can do this. So the cool part of this all was that Scott helped me get my first customers. And instead of telling those customers, we do this at Onboardly too, and this is amazing. Instead of when we get a customer saying, oh, what are your terms? We'll invoice you in 30 days. When you don't have any money, you tell them you need the money up front. That's how you do the work. That's how you pay yourself. That's how you get the computer you need to do the job you need to do. So we've just always created these really interesting ways and just said them with so much confidence that people bought into it, and it worked out really well. So long story short, I started a consulting company. It didn't last very long because I was putting myself out there. I found a better opportunity. And that opportunity actually came in the form of spending some of that money that I made on my first couple customers to go to some conferences. One of the things I think you can do time and time again to make you a more successful person is by getting yourself in rooms where people are smarter than you. I always talk about how smart I think I am. Oh, I'm so smart. Look at me. I've got this. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. I absolutely believe that. If you're the person giving away all the limited knowledge you have in your life, and you're giving it all away, but you're not getting any, you're in the wrong room. Get yourself to places where people are smarter, or just know different things. Maybe they're not as smart as you at certain things, but other things, they're going to be the top of the top. So I spent a lot of money on going to conferences. Conferences you'd think are, oh, conferences are fun. You go there and you listen to people talk and you absorb knowledge. No, conferences you go to hustle. Conferences you go to meet every person that you think can be valuable in your business, and you connect with them and you ask them for help. That's what you do at conferences. So I would spend all of my time outside of conferences talking to people in the hallways that weren't sitting in the seats, or setting up meetings in advance, or going on the forums to find out who was going, and using Twitter to search hashtags to figure out who was going to be attending, and then setting up meetings in advance. So I invested a ton of money in conferences, and from conferences I met my business partner. So when you're sitting at a barbecue sponsored by Microsoft, and you're eating free meat, which is awesome, and you're eating, pork and corn and potato salad, and you see off in the distance a beautiful blonde woman, and then someone comes up to you and, well, first I kind of hated her because I'm like, oh, she's so pretty. Look at that girl. Like, she's one of the few really pretty girls here. Jealousy, right? Like, who isn't jealous of the tall blonde girl in the room? Especially when you're the midget redhead in the room. Like, I must have nothing in common with her. She looks intimidating. And then when my friend Dan, who's also at the conference, comes up and says, oh, I want you to meet my girlfriend. Tall blonde woman, of course. Introduced me to his girlfriend. I have no choice but to at least pretend to like her for a couple minutes, sit down, talk to her, and realize that we're actually trying to tackle the exact same problem. We're just going at it different ways. And so from constraints, so from having no money to figuring out how to get some money, to getting a few customers so that you can use that money to get to a place where people are smarter than you so that you can hopefully learn something, so you can hopefully get better, you're going to come across somebody that then is going to become maybe your business partner, maybe not, maybe your boyfriend. People have interesting stories about meeting loves of their lives on trips and things like that. But long story short, using those constraints to find positive ways to create things from what could be potentially a very challenging situation would be my recommendation. Onboardly is a demand marketing agency. So instead of calling it a PR agency or a marketing agency, those things are really tired. We decided that we were going to do things very differently. We wanted to cater to technology companies, mostly because we want to be around the smartest people in the world. And my opinion is technology people that work in tech, people that work in creating the next great product that's going to change the world, those are the people I want to spend my time with. I don't want to spend time with someone that's reinventing the legal system. That would be boring. No offense if somebody's into legal. But, legal can be sexy sometimes. I know a couple sexy lawyers. Just kidding. I'm waiting for laughs. I want someone to, love that. But, we set out and we really tried to figure out a way to create this business that would touch technology entrepreneurs, founders, and help them be so successful. One of the things that I realized is that people that are tech people typically aren't people, and people that are people typically aren't tech people. I've realized I'm not a tech person, so I can just be a people. So I want to use the skills that I have to help bring their dreams to life. And if bringing our dreams to life at the same time is going to help that, or is going to happen as a result of that, all the better. So when we set out to start the business, what we didn't have was customers, but what we did have was a community, because we'd met those tens of people, those hundreds of people, all the people at the conferences, our friends of friends, people that we'd done a volunteer project for at one point in time, people that we'd worked with in previous jobs. I had enough of them, so I could just call some of those people. There's always one or two that like you everywhere. And the reality is that we managed to figure out a way to get 2 paying customers on our first month of business, pay us upfront at net zero because we just convinced them that was normal. And from there, we haven't looked back. There hasn't been 1 week or 1 month that we haven't been profitable. We do $1 million in business a year. Now we've got a long way to go, but that's a pretty impressive milestone for year 2.5 of business, going into year 3. And we're hiring now. One of the things I'm most proud of is the fact that we've been able to employ a ton of New Brunswickers that didn't want to move away. And if any of you are from here like I am and live here and work here and want to stay here and continue to be here, you understand that's a very big deal. We need to have really cool, creative, exciting jobs for young people in this province. So I'm really, really proud of that. Thank you. I don't think I said anything that's not obvious, but that is very obvious, and we need to continue to do that. So I think that's the thing that I'm most proud of with the company. But the other thing that I'm most proud of is that I've realized, and I'll end with this, that we only have so many years and so many days and so many minutes on this planet. And this is something I think about an awful lot. I did one of those stupid death calculators the other day on the internet where you put in your height, your weight, your age, how active you are, blah, blah, blah. It says I've got 43 years left to live. first of all, I don't believe it, so screw that, I'm gonna live forever. But technology is gonna help that, I'm very confident. But it was really something that opened my eyes to the fact that every day we need to spend time doing things that make us feel good and that make us feel meaningful. I realized this, well, I realized this when I was really young, but I realized it again recently. When I was 9, my little brother died of cancer. So I was, 9-year-old kid, and I'm looking at my little brother, who is the cutest thing. Like, honestly, look at my Instagram someday. I put pictures of him sometimes. I just miss him a lot. But he was the cutest little thing you'd ever want to imagine. And within a year and a half, his life was just cut short and gone. And when you live through that as a child, and then see your parents try to keep up with that, I really think that crushed their dreams in a way. I think there was a piece of that helped them feel like maybe life was a little tough and sucked some of the optimism out of their lives. And because of that, I think I always overcompensated on the optimistic side of things, because someone has to keep everybody up when everybody is really down. Unfortunately, my dad really caught on really well to that, but my mom didn't. My mom died at 50. She was an alcoholic. She died of liver failure. And when you see your 50-year-old mom die, and you realize your family's now officially cut in half, and I'm 32, you look at it and you say, like, time isn't on our side. People make choices all the time, but you look at a little kid who had absolutely nothing in his life that he did wrong. He didn't choose that. Get sick and die, and then you look at someone who just made maybe some wrong choices and didn't feel great and wasn't lifted up and wasn't inspired and wasn't motivated, die, and see their life taken away. You realize, I wake up every day saying, like, this could happen to me whether I cause it or don't cause it, or get on the plane, get on the train, get in the car. Never ever ever look back, and never spend a minute doing anything that isn't making you feel like $1 million, making you feel great and getting you out of bed every day to do something exciting. And those are two really pivotal moments in my life when I realized that time is something that is so precious that we really can't afford to do anything that's not worthwhile with it. We can't afford to do anything that doesn't make us feel awesome, that doesn't help somebody else, that doesn't add to the universe, that doesn't really make the world better. So in all of this, and as you guys are making decisions about what you're going to do next, so I'm speaking to the graduates in particular, but as you're deciding what you're going to do next year, if you want to go get the government job, get the government job. If that's what you want and you're going to put every ounce of your energy into it and make the world a better place, there's a lot of people in government that do that, and there's a lot more work that needs to be done. But if you have ideas or you have dreams that you really want to chase because those things are going to get you excited every morning and every night, don't waste a minute. Don't waste a single minute doing something that doesn't make you happy, because I know I've wasted some time. Learn some lessons the hard way. I would encourage you guys, you got everything at your fingertips to just go get it, and congratulations on what you've already accomplished so far. Cool. I'll be around afterwards if you guys want to chit chat. I'd love to connect.